Don't forget that this tutorial is part of a series of tutorials which you can access on our YouTube playlist, or alternatively, if you would like to, you can purchase the whole course on Udemy. There should be a link to the YouTube playlist and a link to our Udemy course, which should always provide the best price in the video description. Now that we have in the previous tutorial created our first migration file, we've now prepared our application to be actually migrated to the database. Right, so let's go ahead and do exactly that. So we've created our migration. Let's now run the migrate command. So this is going to take the migration file, if you like, and then read and then translate into SQL behind the scenes. So it can then be, the instructions can then be sent to the database and the tables will be created. So let's give this a go. So you can see that it has applied all the changes. So it applied different stages. As I mentioned in the previous tutorial, let's not forget this is the first migration. Therefore, Django has created, in addition to our inventory models, it has also created the other tables that are needed to support the other apps that have been installed by default. If we take a look at the settings file here, to support the other apps that have been defined in the installed apps. Like I mentioned in the previous tutorial, some of these apps here require database tables to be created in order to work correctly. So those will be created initially. But at the bottom here, like I just mentioned, it looks like we have applied our inventory models to the database. So let's take a look at what has been created. Well, first of all, you will need to have the SQLite extension installed if you want to follow along at this point. That's going to allow you to actually navigate and view the data in the SQLite database that has been created right here. So what I can do now with that extension installed is right click and open the database. It should appear at the bottom here. I can drag that up a bit and then I can drop down and have a look inside the database. So this is inside of the database. This is all the tables. These are all the tables that have been created from the migration process. It's quite a few tables. Now, more importantly, we are working with the inventory app here. We've created some tables for the inventory app in our models file, and all those tables correlate to the tables that start with the name inventory underscore, and then the actual class name of the model that we defined in our Django models in the inventory app. So that's how the tables will be named. We can drill down a little bit further if we use the drop down, and then we can actually see the fields that have been created. So like we previously mentioned, Django will create the ID, which is a primary key field for each field, unless we specify an additional primary key, which we haven't done. And then you can see the field names as well as the data types. Now, something you might be wondering is why the data types are named differently in the database than the actual models. And like I said previously, if you remember that database technologies such as SQLite or Postgres or MySQL, they will use different terminology, but ultimately it will represent the same principle. So in this case, a varchar name, that just correlates to, if we go up to this is the inventory attribute table, that just correlates to a character field in Django. I think you'll soon get the hang of that once you familiarize yourself with the common data types. But of course, it's always recommended to take a look at the documentation of your database technology that you're using. One, to ensure that Django supports maybe some of the newer features, if you want to use some of the newer features in the database technology you're using. And two, just because it's good sometimes to read through and familiarize yourself with the basics. Okay, so now we have this migration. The question is, well, how can I roll that back initially? So let's pretend that we've made a mistake. We want to change something in our models. Well, we can reset from this point. It's really quite simple from this point. If you want to completely reset, there's really two artifacts at this point that we've generated. First is the migration file. Second is the database. So if you want to completely reset everything, all you need to do is delete the migration file. Make sure you don't delete the initialization file in that folder. You can delete the cache. If if you're in America. And then you can also delete then the database file. So this is db.sqlite3, which is the default name for the database. So I can delete that too. So I've now deleted all the artifacts that have been generated through the migration process. Simply put, we completely reset back to where we started. So you can go through the process again of making migrations and migrate, and then that will just take you back to where we ended, having now recreated the database.